Welcome to BVT Lectures, course MAJMC, MAJEM, Net. MJM-020 Introduction to Journalism and Mass Communication. Block 1 Introduction to Communication. Unit 1 Communication, Concept and Process. 1.0 Introduction. The word communication comes from the Latin word communis, which means to make common. In simple terms, communication happens when two people share ideas or feelings and understand each other. For communication to be effective, both people must have some common understanding. They should think or feel about the subject in similar ways. The more this common ground exists, the better the communication becomes. The person who sends the message is called the sender or source, and the one who receives it is the receiver. According to media expert Dennis McQuail, communication is the process that increases commonality, but also requires commonality to occur. Another classic definition is by Harold Lasswell, who explained communication as who says what, in which channel, to whom, and with what effect. Here, the channel means the medium. It could be speech, a book, or mass media, like television, radio, or newspapers. Finally, Merrill and Lowenstein described communication beautifully as a meeting of minds, a shared understanding through common symbols. So in essence, communication is not just sending messages, it's about creating shared meaning between people. 1.2 Need for communication. Just like food and shelter, communication is a basic need, not just for humans, but for all living beings. Birds call their groups back home, dogs bark to protect their territory, and even honeybees dance to tell others where to find nectar. For humans too, communication is natural because we are social animals. We cannot live in isolation. 1.2.1 Communication process. Now, let's understand how communication works. Communication is a cyclic process, a continuous sharing of experiences between two or more people. This process includes four main parts: sender, message, channel, and receiver, known as the SMCR model. The sender shares a message through a channel, like speech, writing, gestures, or media, and the receiver interprets it. When the receiver responds, that is called feedback. It helps us know whether the message was understood correctly or not. 1.2.2 Effective communication. Effective communication means the receiver understands and reacts the way the sender intended. For example, if a leader motivates people to vote, or a student sincerely follows a teacher's instructions, that's effective communication. 1.2.3 Barriers to communication. Finally, there are barriers. Things that disturb the process. These include noise, language problems, wrong timing, information overload, and psychological issues like lack of trust or personal bias. Let's understand some key barriers that affect effective communication. 1. Wrong timing. Communication fails if it happens at an inconvenient or inappropriate time. Even the right message can be ignored if timing is wrong. 2. Distortion or noise. Noise means any interference that changes the message's meaning. Example: poor audio, technical glitches, or distractions that make the listener misunderstand the message. 3. Information overload. When too much information is shared, people lose focus. Everyone has a limited attention span. Too many messages can reduce understanding. 4. Language barriers. There are two main types: vocabulary issues, using complex or unfamiliar words; semantic problems, The message's meaning is unclear or misunderstood. 5. Psychological barriers. These include noise in the mind. When someone is distracted, like a student thinking about a cricket match instead of listening to the teacher. Perception set. Differences. People interpret messages differently based on their experiences and beliefs. Lack of trust or jealousy. When the listener doubts the speaker's intention, the message loses impact. Information filtering. People often accept only what matches their opinions and ignore the rest. 1.3 Forms of communication. Communication is all around us, but it is important to understand the different ways it happens. Scholars identify 4 basic forms. First, intrapersonal communication. This is when there is only one participant. You are both the sender and the receiver. It is also called auto-communication or introspection. For example, talking to yourself, or thinking through an idea quietly. Second, interpersonal communication. This happens between 2 people and can be formal or informal. It is also called dyadic communication. Here, the sender gets instant feedback and can observe the other person's body language, gestures, and expressions. This makes it easier to persuade, motivate, and connect emotionally. Third, group communication. This is an extension of interpersonal communication involving more than 2 people. Group communication helps in decision-making, self-expression, and relaxation. Often, a leader emerges to coordinate the conversation within the group. Fourth, mass communication. Here, messages are sent to a large, faceless audience using media like newspapers, TV, radio, or the internet. The sender and receiver are separated by time and space, and the audience is anonymous and diverse. Feedback is slow and limited. Each form has its strengths and uses. Mass communication reaches the largest audience, but interpersonal communication is the most effective for personal influence. For example, advertising a product works best through mass media, but counseling someone to quit smoking is better done personally. So, remember, the context determines which form of communication to use. 1.4 Development of communication media. In the early days, societies had very limited communication channels. People lived largely as equals, because no one controlled the flow of information. Over time, however, those who controlled communication became more powerful, influencing others' opinions. Interestingly, in ancient societies, a man's status was measured by number of wives, then by cattle, later by land, and finally by wealth. This shows how societies developed in stages based on economic progress. Stages of societal development. 1. Pre-agricultural societies. Small communities, mostly hunters and gatherers. Communication was primarily spoken words. 2. Agricultural societies. Farming became the main occupation. Writing emerged, and social structures became more complex. Still, large parts of the population remained illiterate. 3. Industrial societies, machines and mass production defined this era. Gutenberg's printing press, 1455, revolutionized book production. Cities grew as people migrated from rural areas for jobs. 4. Information societies began in the US in the late 20th century, later spreading worldwide. Computers became crucial for creating, processing, and sharing information. Information became power. Those with better access influenced society. Convergence of media. Today, conventional media forms have merged into digital formats, a process called convergence. For example, a mobile phone now functions as a phone, computer, and internet device. Computers can act as televisions. Older technologies like DVDs are becoming outdated. Digital media allows interactivity, so feedback improves communication. Conventional media overview. 1. Newspapers originated as Corantos in the 1620s and diurnals in the 1640s. Today, broadsheets, the Indian Express, Times of India, focus on hard news, while tabloids, Mail Today, Mint, cover features. Cheap and widely read, but limited to literate audiences. 2. Magazines began in England in the 1730s as miscellanies. Now, they are general interest, India Today, or special interest, National Geographic, Better Photography. Magazines often have longer shelf life and attract advertisements. 3. Radio, invented by Marconi in the 1890s. In India, air started in 1936. FM stations began in 1977 in Chennai. Mobile, accessible, and does not require literacy. Community radio targets niche audiences. 4. Television, developed in the 1920s to 30s, introduced in India in 1959. Content included news, entertainment, and educational programs like Krishi Darshan. Today, 24-hour channels compete for TRPs, shaping public perception. 5. Cinema, started as silent black and white films in 1896. India's first film, Raja. Harish Chandra, 1913. First talkie, Alamara, 1931. Films entertain and influence society, with censorship ensuring age-appropriate content. 6. Folk media, traditional, live performances, conveying social, moral, and political messages. Examples: Tamasha in Maharashtra, Yakshagana in Karnataka, Ramleela in North India. Effective for rural development communication. New media. Internet. The abacus was the first computing tool, followed by modern computers designed by Charles Babbage. The Internet today replaces and merges many communication technologies. Social networking. Connects people globally but also has risks like cybercrime. All conventional media now rely on digital tools for production and distribution. 1.5 Mass communication. The conventional view. In the conventional view, media was seen as all-powerful. Communication flowed from a single source to a large, anonymous audience, regardless of their interests or preferences. The audience was considered passive, accepting whatever the media presented. A few media owners controlled what the public saw or heard, shaping opinions and tastes. This control led to two important functions: gatekeeping, deciding what content reaches the public, and agenda setting, influencing what people think about. Messages were undifferentiated, aimed at creating a common perspective across all audiences, with minimal feedback. Economically, conventional media relied on advertising revenue. The bigger the audience, the higher the profits. Media tried to reach as many people as possible, rather than targeting specific groups based on their needs. In short, conventional mass communication was one-way, centralized, and profit-driven, focusing on broad influence rather than audience diversity, and quote. 1.6 Mass communication. The contemporary view. Contemporary communication. In today's world, convergence is key. Convergence means merging technologies to create multiple outputs and making them easier to use. Because of this, the media has become more consumer-oriented. With 24-hour news channels, multiple entertainment channels, newspapers, magazines, and FM radio stations, audiences have a huge variety to choose from. Everyone, from housewives and children to serious news seekers, can pick what they want. This created competition. Intermedia competition is between different media platforms, like print versus TV. Intramedia competition is between similar media, like two newspapers. Now, control has shifted to the consumer. People can switch channels, choose newspapers, or even create their own content. Platforms like blogs, YouTube, and Citizen journalism have made audiences prosumers, both producers and consumers of media. In short, today's mass communication empowers the audience and makes media more dynamic and interactive than ever before. Media economics. Today, media doesn't just inform, it markets itself like any product, similar to soap or shampoo. Media organizations use innovative marketing strategies to attract audiences, often competing through price wars and trying to increase circulation or TRPs. Many media houses now own multiple platforms. A newspaper might also run a TV channel, radio station, or event company. This not only helps them create monopolies but also supports all their platforms, making them self-sufficient. With this structure, media companies can negotiate better deals with advertisers. At the same time, they adapt to audience preferences, encourage participation, and seek profit maximization. In short, contemporary media is flexible, commercial, and audience-driven. 1.7 Media and social construction of reality. Media have always shaped public opinion, sometimes subtly, sometimes overtly. Even today, their influence is strong, though audiences often don't realize it, especially in countries like India, where media literacy varies across demographics, cultures, religions, and exposure levels. So, what is the social construction of reality? Simply put, it's the version of reality that media present to us, often with an agenda. This could be for profit, promoting stereotypes, or shaping societal values. For example, Indian television ads frequently promote fairness creams as a standard of beauty. Over time, people unconsciously accept fairness as a key parameter of attractiveness. Another example is the portrayal of modern Indian women as superwomen, excelling in careers, family responsibilities, fashion, morality, and motherhood, all at once. Clearly, this is not practically possible, but the media create and reinforce this image. This is called social construction because society accepts it as true. Media give us role models, images, and norms, shaping what we perceive as reality. In short, as media theorists say, reality is not what is real. Reality is what is perceived. Signs and symbols in communication carry both objective and subjective meanings, further influencing how we interpret the world around us. 1.8 Let us sum up. Let's sum up what we've learned. Media was never truly designed to work purely for philanthropy, even though it was expected to be socially responsible. It's up to us, the audience, to stay aware of the content we consume and decide collectively what to accept or reject. Initially, the founders of media in our country aimed to strengthen it at both national and regional levels, each with specific objectives. But as media grew powerful, it often shifted focus. to suit its own interests. So, who is responsible? The truth is, no single entity can shoulder this alone. Real change happens when the audience actively calls out malpractices and challenges the synthetic value systems presented to us through news, entertainment, and popular role models. Change is slow and never easy, but the future holds hope. The question is, can our media, together with an aware society, rise to meet this challenge?